So, I got a question. Like, we're not trying to get my videos, or we're not trying to get more videos deleted or kicked off of the YouTubes and stuff, but we got questions, and we should be allowed to ask questions. Now, I'm not saying on this video that specifically vaccines are what's causing all the autism, but we gotta ask what is causing all the autism. It's a serious concern. I mean, if it's not the vaccines, it's got to be something, right? Um, so we have the reason this is alarming is because there's just so much. There's so the rate of autism has gone up so much since the 1960s, and there's a lot of different things you can point at to say that, hey, well, this is different than it was then. And now we're talking about um, not just this autism where they're talking about mental like a mental illness situation where um, you have learning disabilities, speech disabilities, social problems, anxiety issues, and the like, all the way up to self harm and all this. So there's that avenue of the autism that's been kind of focused on mostly. But there's also all these other problems, like the problems in the immune system problems, gastrointestinal problems, neurological issues, autoimmune issues, allergies, and there's more stuff that's just been increasing exponentially since the vaccine schedule has increased exponentially. And there's other things out there that I think we can look at to maybe look for the blame. Now, we know that processed foods and the idea of eating all these processed foods made from like wheat base, corn base, is not good for you. And it's also the fact that these processed foods all contain, and not even just processed foods anymore, they're slipping this stuff in everything: neurotoxins, endocrine disruptors, things like food dyes, food coloring, artificial flavors, artificial sweeteners. Um, Artificial sweeteners, real bad offender, and the fact that now they think it's okay to put. Now, I've discovered this recently in, I think it was Big Red Gum or some juicy fruit maybe, where they put all the artificial sweeteners and sugar and high fructose corn syrup in there. What is the point? So we heard that. I mean, they're trying to blame. Um, I mentioned this before. They try to blame children's Tylenol. That's why there's so much autism now, because all the everybody gave their kids children's Tylenol, right? I don't know. I don't think that correlates. But that's just one of those things where they're like, oh well, it's something that everybody did, right? Well, maybe it was this, something they could easily blame on and hand it over to the big corporation that's already in charge of paying out billions in lawsuits, the Monsanto Bayer, Frankenstein Corporation. So they want to scapegoat it, and you can probably pull up dozens of other causes nefariously named, and these are mainstream scientific and just regular news sources, and they're going to sit there and tell you all these other things that are causing autism. Sounds kind of familiar, right? Sounds kind of like all those side effects from that one thing that they just did not too long ago, and they're trying to blame it on the other thing, or blame it on everything. Blame heart attacks on too much exercise, eating too much, eating not enough. Things that everybody does, like playing video games. That's kind of what they want to do with autism. They just want to push it off to a scapegoat, so they don't really have to answer to all these poisonings that I just mentioned. And then there's other poisonings too that I didn't even mention, like the microplastics, that are in everything, the Teflon, all the water systems in the country that are contaminated because of the old systems, and they're leaching lead and all these other chemicals into the water that you drink. Baby food and baby formula. Have you ever looked at the ingredient list on those lately? It looks like some kind of a scientific concoction more than something that you would call nutritious food. So, what is going on at the FDA or the CDC? Why isn't anybody looking into this? This is one of the most pressing, I think, issues of our time. Why isn't any of these news agencies doing investigative reports about it? Why doesn't anybody want to get to the bottom of it? Well, all you got to do is turn the TV on, especially during campaign season. Look at who's running for president, look at who's running for office in different places, and watch the commercials. Keep your eye on the commercials, keep your eye on who's funding the super PACs. That's because Big Pharma controls all of it. They control all the politicians, every one of them. They control all the news organizations and media companies, all of them. There's only 6 of them, so it ain't that hard to do. They control all the local news. They control everything. They have money everywhere. They can they say what the science is. So you can't really expect them to do any kind of investigation on themselves, or you can't expect them to actually get to the bottom of it. So we got all these possible things that could be the culprit, but we don't even have anybody even attempting to try to separate it or do a side by side study. Like, it seems to me like you could eliminate some of these things as being the culprit, if you wanted to. Now, I'm just going to leave this here at that. Like, I'm not going to inject my thoughts and opinions about this because I really don't have any. I've been dealing with and studying this problem for many years. And like I've told people before, it's not a situation where they become better at detecting autism. It's a situation where anybody that's anybody that's I'm 51, so anybody that's anywhere near my age can tell you that we remember when we went to school, there wasn't that many people that had autism, if that's what you want to call it. There wasn't that many people that needed special attention. They didn't have actual separate schools altogether where they just have these special needs kids being taught and looked after and whatnot. So I I'm only asking this because it's gotten to the point, back when I was in grade school or whatever, it wasn't that big of a deal. It was like you had, um, uh, a classroom where there was maybe 5 or 6 kids from all different age groups that would go, and that was your special ed. And they had like a special bus. It was about half as big as a normal bus because there wasn't that many of these kids, and that's the way it was. But now everybody in society is only one person removed from having to take care of somebody that has problems that you know so I'm just going to leave this all at that, and leave it as an open-ended question and discussion that we should be having, that we should have our authoritative people and media sources looking into, and maybe trying to address this. But what ultimately my opinion is that it's all about corruption. It's all about this fascist corporate insanity where corporations know that these things are causing these things because it helps their bottom line. They're creating permanent customers that have no choice but to crawl back to them for band-aids for all the side effects and remedies for all the problems that are caused because of the poisoning that they had. And this poisoning is coming from big pharma. It's coming from every direction. It's coming from big ag. It's coming from everywhere that they could get it. Everywhere where they could poison you, they're trying to put this poison in you. All right. And these poisons, just if you don't know about these things, just look it up. Neurodisruptors, endocrine disruptors, neurotoxins, you know, these things are destroying people. All right. So I'm going to, for some food for thought, I'm going to read this post. So I'm going to read it and we'll get to the credit later. So let me just start it out. Okay. But to be technical, vaccines do not cause autism. Autism is a behavioral diagnosis. In order to receive the diagnosis of autism, a child must exhibit a certain number of behaviors over a certain time frame. If he or she does not do so, the diagnosis of autism is never warranted. There is no blood test for autism. Autism can't be confirmed or ruled out by laboratory analysis. It's strictly a behavioral diagnosis. Therefore, anything that causes physiological damage cannot directly cause autism. Uh, so, ergo, vaccines cannot cause autisms. Vaccines cause other stuff. Vaccines cause encephalitis. They admit to these things. Vaccines cause seizures, vaccines cause immune system deficiencies, and vaccines can cause gastrointestinal problems. Encephalitis causes mood swings. Encephalitis causes extreme pain. Encephalitis causes inattention and impulsivity. Encephalitis causes aggression. Encephalitis causes balance problems and difficulty relating to one's environment. Seizures cause mood swings. Seizures cause inattention and impulsivity. Seizures cause alterations in consciousness. Immune system deficiencies cause children to have more frequent bacterial infections, such as ear infections, upper respiratory infections, sinusitis, and strep infections. Immune system deficiencies cause children to have more frequent viral infections, such as stomatitis, fevers of unknown origin, viral rashes, hives, conjunctivitis, and gastrointestinal viruses that cause vomiting and diarrhea. Immune system deficiencies cause children to be more vulnerable to everything that's going on around and have a tougher time getting over the things than their peers. Gastrointestinal damage from vaccines causes diarrhea. Gastrointestinal damage from vaccines causes nausea, reflux, vomiting, and recently discovered disease now known as GERD, gastroesophageal reflux disease. Gastrointestinal damage from vaccines causes increased vulnerability to viruses and bacteria, which leads to increased administration of antibiotics, which leads to the overgrowth of pathogenic yeast. Pathogenic yeast overgrowth leads to intestinal hypermealability or leaky gut syndrome. Pathogenic yeast overgrowth leads to constipation. Pathogenic yeast overgrowth leads to food allergies. Pathogenic yeast overgrowth leads to skin eruptions, drunken, silly behavior, inattention and impulsivity, and cravings for bread, sugar, ice cream, milk, and carbohydrates. Technically, vaccines do not cause autism because technically there is no such thing as autism. Vaccine causes the underlying physical conditions that result in pain, neurological damage, immune system disorders, gastrointestinal damage, and yeast overgrowth, all of which combines to produce the behavior symptoms that result in the autism diagnosis. And all this thing about spectrum is just like, oh, that's just how poisoned you were and how much these things are affecting you. Gastrointestinal damage is the most obvious result of vaccine damage. When a previously healthy child suddenly starts having multiple episodes of watery and extremely stinky diarrhea every day, and this happens shortly after receiving vaccinations, it is notable as a vaccine injury. What is not so obvious is when the child's gut is permanently damaged, he or she is no longer able to absorb nutrients necessary to produce neurotransmitters necessary for proper brain function. So when the child develops mood swings, sleep difficulties, and learning disabilities several months later, these issues are not recognized as being related to the vaccine injury because the initial damage occurred many months earlier. This is why Dr. Wakefield is such a treat to the pharmaceutical industry. This is from Dr. Wakefield's original paper. Now, the conclusion is we have identified a chronic enterocolitis in children that may be related to neuropsychiatric dysfunction. In most cases, the onset symptoms was after measles, mumps, and rubella immunization. That's all I gotta say about this subject at this time. I just want people to know that, I'm just, like I said, I'm anti-pharma, so of course I do not trust these vaccines. That's just me. Am I here telling you that vaccines cause this or that? Nope. I'm just here trying to ask questions and trying to see if anybody cares what is causing all these autism diagnoses. All right, have a good day.